Hello, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
This is Jim here, and I'm going to be talking about Ant-Man number 5, issue written by Zeb Wells with art by Dylan Burnett and colors by Mike Spicer. I don't usually go that far out there, but I love the colors of Mike Spicer's here. Mwah. And with this book, it is ending. This is the finale, number 5. It's one of the books that are coming out in this week of the digital stuff, the stuff that was print turned to digital. And I know that a lot of people were turned off by that. People had been collecting it physically. It was one of those things where what I read, some of the comments from not just this book, but some of the other things that were coming out, say a Hawkeye Freefall, things like that, that you ended up, well, they're either going to end digitally or they ain't ending at all. So it is the damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. I'm glad personally, because I'm a selfish guy, that it ended this way anyway, because I was getting it digitally. So it didn't really bother me, but it's not coming out physically until possibly the trade. If you haven't read this, I suggest you do. And I suggest at the least wait till it comes out on the Marvel Unlimited app. I think that you will be impressed. I think that the sales numbers did not equal out to the quality of this book. I thought that it was a great book. It took an issue or about an issue and a half, I think, to get its footing and to get going, because what you needed to have was more Cassie with Scott, father, daughter, also Ant-Man, Stinger, as they became a team, as they started working together, begrudgingly at one point, but still working together, because the idea that Cassie thought that her father, Scott, was just an embarrassment. She even has offers to go off with Kate Bishop. Yeah, I have offers for West Coast Avenger. I'm going to go. And she ends up staying. And Scott, for his part, has done everything in his life just to get close to his daughter. He ended up stuck in Florida, for crying out loud, all the way back in War of the Realms, because he wanted to be closer to his daughter. Now, he's not a man of means. He does not have a lot of money, and he's been hanging out, living in an anthill until recently, because the anthill that he was living in, which had a aunt named Pamela, who was solid gold, the interactions between Pamela the aunt and Scott were some of the best things in comics the past 6 months, and also was the idea that she was a friend, confidant / landlord. I would say that she was the best of both Mr. Roper and Mr. Furley, with a little Larry in between. Do you know what I'm saying here, people? Do you know what I'm saying? And yeah, so all of this book, though, has been based on family, the father-daughter, but also the family of the ants. That comes into play because last issue, Macrothrax, the big bad, he ended up killing all the ants in the anthill, including Pamela. I was devastated. I seem more devastated than Scott was in the book. That kind of comes into play here. So I'm glad. I thought that Zeb Wells dropped the ball there. He only dropped it a little, and then it was a hacky sack. He kicked it up and grabbed it, and then hopefully hid the hacky sack, because hacky sack is nonsense. Don't do hacky sack, kids. But you start off with a credits page that has the recap. And the recap has been done by Pamela the Ant. And she's dead. So she can't do it. And it was funny. I actually like this. And it's Elephant Hawkmoth who's going to do it now. Now, please tell me that you don't read this. And I will read it out loud as well. And if you don't want to read it and want to listen to my voice, tell me that it doesn't make you smile. Just the character moment of Elephant Hawkmoth giving you the credits. And not even the credits, the recap, because I'm getting more unique characterization for Elephant Hawkmoth than a lot of books that I've read in the past couple of weeks. And I am meaning fully The Legion of Superheroes by Brian Michael Bendis. I know more about Elephant Hawkmoth, and like Elephant Hawkmoth, might want to hang with Elephant Hawkmoth more than, say, a bouncing boy. So he says, Sup, Macrothrax took control of Bug Lords to take over world. Ant-Man and Stinger, only one stand in way. Look, Elephant Hawkmoth knows Ant's good at recapping story, but that not how this moth rolls. You read first 4 issues or no read. Moth has things to pollinate. And I'm telling you, I might have to make a meme that has the elephant hawk moth and just has moth has things to pollinate. If somebody gets on my nerves, I'm flashing that out there. If they start to waste my time, moth has things to pollinate is what they're going to get. And I'm doing that when I'm done. And if you do it before me, I will slice you. So you end up starting out the issue. And you did have a scene that starts it out where you have in the Antarctic one of those crazy stations that's monitoring everything from possibly the size of Trash Island, right?
How dare you?
To weather storms possibly created by global warming.
How dare you?
Or maybe even, some ETs coming down.
How dare you?
I don't know why Greta's against the ETs, but I'm sure she is. But they end up seeing this big storm coming, and a storm so big that that the Sci-Fi Channel will have a movie about it pretty soon. But it's not a storm. It's actually a swarm, and it's a bug swarm. And it's mainly two big giant bug lords that are the size of continents because Macrothrax, when he did destroy the anthill, he stole the Pym particles that were Scott's. The ants called them man eggs. Funny. And he ended up giving it to the two remaining bug lords because he killed the main bug lord, made them big, and stole Cassie's stinger helmet to be able to control all of this. So he is going to attack the mammals and everything else in the world so that the bugs can end up ruling the world. It's #bug life. And so you have Cass, she blames herself. She let that helmet get stolen from her, a helmet that was just upgraded by the Avengers. And that's why it's able to do this. She's embarrassed. She feels responsible. She is going to go off and fight Macrothrax, even though he has been kicking the crap out of Scott and Cassie this whole time. So she's going to go. Scott does not want her to go. Listen, I'm your dad. I don't want you to go fight a bug guy on a continent, big bug. And really, how big are those bugs? It's not small. It's big. He says, you're not going. She flies. He doesn't. She goes. He can't follow her. Well, it's a thing where she goes off to face Macrothrax, and we're going to jump back and forth between that fight and then also Scott being grabbed by Vetruck, who now is Vetruck the Betrayed. He was betrayed. He was the one that was killed by Macrothrax, and now the World Hive is going off doing things the World Hive normally wouldn't do, going to attack the world. Things are upside down. Cats and dogs are dating, all these things going on. And you have a moment here, though, that is so good because throughout this whole series, especially near the beginning for the most part, but even as it goes on, you end up having Scott really, really desperately trying to prove to his daughter that he is a hero. He will tell anybody that he's an Avenger. If you end up going and, hey, Scott, what time is it? It's 1:30. I was an Avenger. Okay, well, that's interesting. Hey, did you see the game yesterday? Who won? By the way, I was an Avenger. I don't know what game you're talking about. I hope it's not Monopoly because that's boring. But, maybe if it's Gnip Gnop, I'm in. And so everybody to him is like, he's trying to impress them, but it's always the thing that he did in the past. And you get the idea, especially with the Pym particles stolen, that he thinks that he is a loser. Cassie thinks he is at the beginning of the series. He is pretty much sleeping or was sleeping on the couch of his Ant Hill friends. This is like the bottom of the barrel here. But he didn't realize that all along, the power and the love was within him because you end up where he was being watched and somebody was impressed. And it was the World Hive. All the bugs in the world were watching and know that Scott cared about those ants and in Pamela in particular. And Vetruck, you see him. He is not going to live. I don't know if he's going to die. And so I think it's as he's becoming one with the World Hive, as he is dying and, breathing his last breath, he wants to talk to him. I do think that he is communing with the World Hive even more and more and more and realizes that, oh my God, this Scott, this Ant-Man, he is a hero. And he is somebody who is a hero for us. And what he's doing is good. He needs some help and they're going to give it to him. But before we get there, you see Cass, just being badass. She goes up and she is facing a villain. And just imagine, I mean, she not even just a girl, me. Imagine me having to go in the Savage Lands up to a giant continent-sized bug to face off against a guy his face looks like a hamburger, and he's wearing your helmet, all these things, and he's kicked your butt. I would have soiled undies is what I would have. And yes, that is gross, but hey, I'm not going to lie. I'm like the elephant hawkmoth, and that's how I roll. So she goes up, though, and says, hey, that's my helmet, dude. It's brand new, and I want it back. She's just going to say, and you end up throughout this whole deal, throughout this whole fight, and this will be I'm going to get you, you beat me up. I'm going to come back, you beat me up. It goes on and on, but each time you end up having her say, I got this. I got this. She really needs to do this for herself, even after we see her father, Scott, what he ends up being able to do. But she still, I got this. And it plays out really well by the end. Well, you end up, they do fight. And the thing is, when Macrothrax ended up stealing the helmet from Cass in the Savage Lands, he ended up doing a move where he jumped up around her, grabbed the helmet as he swung over her, and then grabbed her and threw her over a cliff. He thought she was dead. He even says at one point, I threw you off a cliff. You should be dead. And he goes, and she says, are you dumb? I have wings. Pay attention, dude. The worst thing to say, because he rips the wings off and then throws her off, but she comes back. She is one tough cookie. Now, this is what I was talking about with the whole deal with the World Hive, with Vetrock. He has been watching. The World Hive has been watching, and he says, I know why you're here. It's not just for your daughter. It's not just to save the smooth apes, which are the humans, And he says, it's because, Macrothrax slayed your aunts. He slayed Pamela. And you get a moment here that if you're just looking at this and you never read it, you might not get this feel from it. In my mind now, this does play out because I was a little upset about how Zeb Wells ended up handling the whole Pamela death with Scott. I get this idea, and it's Dylan Burnett doing it as well here, that Scott, this is now seeing that this is something that hurt. He was upset. He didn't have time to process it. There was too much stuff going on. And now it's kind of like, how do you know about Pamela? Like, this is something that later he is going to have to unpack and he's going to have to deal with. And he's going to get very upset about. But right now there is something to do. And he wants revenge. So right now the adrenaline, the revenge is going. But hearing that, it makes him kind of step back. Like, how did you hear about Pamela? And it's the World Hive. They were watching. They know he's a hero. And this is such a great moment. If you're reading this series and just watching Scott struggle to prove that he's a good guy, let alone a hero, but yet wanting everybody to look at him like one of the Avengers, like, a Captain America. And it's just not happening. When you end up having Vetrock say, the World Hive will help you because you are worthy. That is like the ultimate deal for Ant-Man. This is the pinnacle of what Ant-Man is supposed to be and what he strives for. The World Hive, the bugs of the world, think he's worthy, and they are going to help in a crazy and disgusting way because now just imagine these are all the bugs. This is the World Hive going and kind of they're going in his mouth and his nose and his ears, all that disgusting stuff up into itching because it's in the mask, things like that. But the thing is, it's also in the Savage Lands, which just has to have even worse bugs. I mean, the bugs, this is worse than Australia, which I kind of think the Savage Lands is, right? It's just the quote unquote Savage Land. It's Australia. You got everything in Australia is only made to kill you, including those weird swirling toilets. But you end up where they seem to be consuming him. They seem to be eating him. They are not. They are making him into the Kaiju Ultraman Ant-Man, who then goes and can attack the big continent-sized bugs. Now, again, this series is kind of rushing a little to an ending here. This is, is it Deus Machina? It may be. I don't care because it's fun. If you have to do things like this, then do it fun. And that's what this is. It does end up making Macrothrax and Cassie stop. And like, what's going on? And I just love the smile there. He's like, I'll take it from here. Like now he's this big bad bug monster kaiju hero. And Macrothrax is just like, what the heck is going? This is sacrilege. The problem is he can kind of control those bugs with Cassie's helmet, but Cassie's pretty impressed, like, Dad. And this is where you kind of have these fights going on, and you do have a wrestling, Godzilla wrestling type deal going. And I love Cassie. There was like, holy crap, Dad is going ham on that bug lord, and he's doing the, the atomic knee drop. He's doing it all, and he's getting them really good. Well, this is where you do keep having Cass wanting to do things herself. Yeah, Dad, you're a kaiju bug monster hero, but I want to fight Macrothrax by myself. And he says at the one point, you have 60 seconds. Gone in 60 seconds. You go. And she keeps getting knocked around. Hey, I'll help you. No, I got it. And then he's like, oh, God. Okay, you got 20 seconds. Let me just do this. No, I got it. She ends up fighting, and this is where she ends up kind of having the sleeper hold from the front there on Macrothrax, which he just throws her off, but it gets the punchline deal where Scott's like, okay, it's my turn now. And she's like, no, I got this. And she means the helmet. She got her helmet back and she did it. And it's such a good moment. And there's these little moments when you realize that the writer Zeb Wells has made you fall in love with these characters, even though you didn't realize. Yeah. So you end up having Macrothrax. He does not have the helmet. That's really the only thing, the thin line between, Ant-Man and Stinger and Macrothrax is he had Cassie's helmet, was able to control all of these bugs. Well, can't do that anymore. And what ends up happening is Cassie then tells the bugs, including these huge continents, go get Macrothrax. He's a jerk. Go get him. And it's funny because they're like, you betrayed us. You're going to get bug justice. And they're sitting there like, what exactly is, but it's you get eaten. I get it. That's what happens.
Smash.
Yes, so like pretty cool. And yeah, that's how we end. They take care of Macrothrax. He gets eaten, and you end up having a nice story about a father trying to impress his daughter. And in the meantime, the daughter impresses the father, and they both realize that they love each other. And you have this moment. Again, there's so many cool moments where you end up having Scott so upset. It's like, they said I was worthy. I mean, where was Thor when this was happening? And I wish the Avengers were here to see how serious all of this was, and also saw us save the world. And that's the thing. You have to realize they did save the world. This wasn't just a goofy thing. Macrothrax and these continent-sized bugs were leaving the Savage Lands to pretty much destroy the world. If Cassie and Scott didn't stop it, the world destroyed. But you have the deal. They didn't see us save the... And she says, but I saw you, Dad. And he says, I saw you too. And it's really, really nice. And they decide to watch the whole sunset before they leave the Savage Lands. They're going to be flying on the elephant hawk moths that we saw before, and they're going to get out of there. But you end up having what usually drives me nuts, where you do have the end, where I hate any sort of finale. The end? And then it just ends. But I realize that I don't mind if you have the end and then have an epilogue to show that maybe it isn't the end. And I don't necessarily think that this book with this creative team will continue. But what it does show you is Scott, and I'm not going to spoil it, who it is. It is somebody that's big for Scott. It just shows that the whole deal is not the ending for Ant-Man. It's going to continue on, and that will be great. But I'm going to give this issue an 8.5. It does get padded a little in the middle, but overall, I did really like the series. I think that you should go and read it. And to end this up, I want to tell you that please subscribe to the channel, like the video, all that stuff, and look at the notes below because there's links to everything, Weird Science, websites, and podcasts and things like that. But thanks, everybody, and I'll talk to you later.